Hey, welcome to the Unshakable Life podcast. Amber and Rebecca here, ready to talk real, raw, and vulnerable. We were discussing, okay, so what's the topic today is we're going through those 10 toxic traits, right? And we were like, which one? Because both of us like to really talk in the fun stuff, right? Like what's going to push you forward. And so we're like, oh, toxic traits. Which one do we want to go after? And we're realizing like this one needs a lot of time and this one needs a lot. And so today we just want to get poignant and dialed in for a real quick passover of the topic of self-loathing. And I remember there was a period in my life, I think early 20s, I really did go through that. I hated the skin I was in. I just was like, nothing felt good to me. And I was in such a bad place emotionally. And actually at that time, somebody pointed out to me, girl, you got to stop the self-loathing. And I didn't even realize I was in it. But I realized at that moment, oh man, something needs to change. And so I think we all kind of go through it to a different extent. I mean, for me, I literally got into self-loathing. But some of the rest of us, we get into a place of just, we beat ourselves up like more than anyone else would. We think our circumstances are tough, but actually, the enemy inside of yourself is yourself. And it's how you're treating yourself in every moment, as thinking of those things of, gosh, my spouse got mad at me and now I just suck as a married part. I was going to say it could be wife or husband, depending on who's listening, right? But for me, I just suck as a wife because my husband reacted this way, or I'm not good enough because of this. And I know my husband, man, we should invite him on this podcast because that man could talk to this, because he went through a period, no matter what, he would just beat himself up over just any failure he had. But really, failure is such an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to celebrate what you've learned. And so learning to embrace that failure, because we're all going to mess up. I mean, and learning to reframe that in the moment and say, wow, I was so cute today, and be able to laugh at it, learn from it, and move on. But this notion, this topic of self-loathing, I think it comes out in so many ways, because what we do then is we accuse others. And, so and so hates me. In reality, it's you hating you.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we'll superimpose that over another relationship and decide that that person is not enough and they're hating you, and they don't really love you. And all those stories start. I've actually experienced this before, where I just, that relationship's just a mirror to you to say, this is how you're feeling about yourself in the moment. What do you think, Amber? What hits you when we talk about this looming topic of self-loathing?
Talk about it. Seriously. But I do want to pause and just offer a place of empathy, because it's like you said, there are varying degrees of this. And I just have this like gut feeling that if one of our listeners is stuck in a place where it's really real and heavy for them right now, like I just want them to be seen. And I want to express empathy for that. And so I'm hopeful through our conversation today that we can do a couple of things for whatever spectrum, wherever you're at on the spectrum of self-loathing. Because I think you're right, it is, right? Like we don't all experience that extreme hatred for ourselves, but we do all question ourselves or find something wrong with us or have a really loud inner critic, right? Like we all have these things. And so my hope for today is that for one, if you're sitting in a mud puddle of self-loathing, we're going to get in it with you for a minute. Like, we just want to acknowledge that it's here and it sucks, but we don't want to leave you there either, right? We want to start stepping out of it and walking forward. Yeah. And so there was so much. And I think that Rebecca and I both have, and we say this to each other often, like, this thing happened or blew up or whatever. And both of us immediately go to self-blame. What did I do wrong here? How can I fix this? Right. And we're learning that about ourselves. And if you had privilege to hear our Marco Polos, which you will not, but if you ever had privilege to that, you'll hear that come out of our mouths very often
Yes.
to each other, right? Like, And then I thought, how much of this is my fault and what could I have done differently and da 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 da. And we don't think about that as self loathing, but I think that it is on the spectrum of that. And that, there is I think with everything, there's so many nuances, right? Like there can be a lot of gray because we've learned through life and it's just part of who we are. We're going to be responsible. And so if something goes wrong, what can I take responsibility for? But asking it that way is way different than saying, this is all my fault. And we're learning together, even to reflect that back to each other. Like, well, what is your responsibility in this? Because it would be easy for either of us to get stuck in, I had a fight with my spouse or my kid or whatever, and I did this wrong, and I did this, and I did this, and piling the blame on. And we don't let each other do that. And I think that's like, there's something really powerful about having someone in your corner who you can be honest with, who can reflect back, like, well, I'm not going to sit here and let you pile all of this on because this is not all your fault. Sorry, we're not playing this game. We're not doing this today. We're going to walk this out differently. So those are some of my initial thoughts on this conversation.
Yeah, that's huge. I like how you're bringing forward the remedy along with the ailment. So it's like, first of all, I just want to acknowledge you, Amber, because you are really that person that attunes so well. And so even as I'm talking, because I'm a bit of the pusher, I'm like, okay, I see you. Now let's get out. I don't like muddy puddles. Let's move. Let's get into the swimming pool and clean it all off. And you're like, hey, let me sit in that mud puddle with you just for a moment so that we can really gain the value out of this moment in time. And it's really beautiful. It's really precious. And I love how you do that. So you acknowledge the listener, hey, you might be on. Most of us are on some level because honestly, I don't know a human on the planet that doesn't have that little bit in themselves that says, I'm not enough. And because I'm not enough, I won't be loved. And that cycles over and over and it comes out as, if you let that monster grow, it comes out as, I hate myself. I suck, you know? But it also comes out in those littler ways, like my classic and your classic is over responsibility. Like we need to say, what can I take responsibility for? But I think you and I have to go, what is not actually your responsibility that you're taking responsibility for? Because we tend to hold the whole thing and try to just beat ourselves. I remember there was a time in my life that I was getting a bunch of false accusations, just like, you are this, man, we demonize each other sometimes. And it is so sad how we do that. Is somebody says, yeah, I had a relationship that was around 5 years long. And I said one thing that they didn't agree with. And then they said, I'm done with relationship. It's like, really, then was our relationship at all? If that is like, we have to remember the person's entire last 5 years and put that in that context of that one moment and ask questions. But I remember this time that's just a whole bunch of false baloney happening. And what I did to myself was self-loathing. I said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what a poor job I did. And so I was using every tool in the book to convict myself of all the wrongs and like trying to really beat myself up and find the way I was who they were saying I was. It was the hardest but best time of my life. I did go into self-loathing. I'm like, God, and I just in that moment I felt like I wanted to die. I did. I even said it out loud. I would do that differently now if I
Yeah.
was to go back. But I was in so much pain over too much care about what other people thought. And that still keeps coming up too. And I think I tore myself apart. Now, in my case, it was a blessing, it just really was a blessing, not in that moment. But because I tore myself apart, I had nothing left of myself. I got this beautiful opportunity to rebuild myself from the ground up, step by step by step, and realize like, who am I? Now those same things could come out and I'm like, whatever, you're full of it, right? I can do that. But I have to say in that moment, that was a clear moment of way beating myself up. and taking too much ownership and responsibility and trying to make everybody happy and believe the truth when people wanted to believe the lies. And so um, I just acknowledge that is like it's all part of a process as you work it out. And I think you're right to pair that together, Amber, with how we to this day will go, well, that was all my responsibility. Which is, you think outside of the emotional moment of that and you like laugh. I was like, wait, that was no, not my responsibility. I need to do what I know is right. And let things kind of move as they move, right?
It's so true. Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking, and I wrote it down like, why? Why do we self loathe? Why do we beat ourselves up? And I think it gives us a sense of control, right? Like, if it's my fault that my friend walks away for 5 years, if it's my fault that my kid is making poor choices, if it's my fault that things are falling apart, then I can do something about it. And then I feel like I have control, right? And let's face it, wherever there's control, there's fear. And so we've got to work through that. But it was just an interesting like aha moment that I had that like, oh my gosh, yes, we beat ourselves up because then we can fix it or we think we can. And often that fixing it comes at a great expense of abandoning ourselves or overlooking the wrong that someone else did or like obviously we believe in forgiveness, we live in forgiveness, but I think that even in forgiveness we have to acknowledge that there was pain. And sometimes that means there has to be a boundary. And we've talked before, boundaries aren't walls, they're fences to protect the relationship. But if we are constantly beating ourselves up, then nobody else does anything wrong and it's all my fault. It's all mine to fix. And I think we get into some overfunctioning, some codependency, if you will, when we let that kind of take over.
Yeah, that's huge. So I'm thinking about that because I was like, oh, nailed it. I that really hit. I don't know if those of you who are just listening to the audio, the face, the look on my face, that really hit, right? That was huge. Something I'm just reminded of and thinking of is how we get disgusted with ourselves. And just a thought that, as I was thinking through this topic is, disgust is the emotion of separation. When we talk about it in the realm of self loathing, think about that. Disgust was really created so that you can separate from something that's not life giving. Like that is the point of it. And you think about that when you get disgust with yourself, now you're trying to push yourself away. And the relationship with yourself is no longer life giving. Think about the gravity of that. Amber, I'd love to hear your comments on that because I was thinking about how that all comes together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's emotion of disconnect, of separation, right? And so we're separating from ourselves because maybe there's something in us that is not life giving at the moment. It doesn't mean that we're not life giving. It means that there's something in us, there's some choice that we're making, some maybe even a wound in our heart, some limiting belief that we're holding hands with. That's how I see it, like skipping down the road, holding hands with it, like, this is my best friend. No, it's not. It's limiting belief. Like, you got to let go of it. But when it separates us from us, then we have this disconnect from who we were truly made to be. And then you get into, oh my gosh, there's so many layers here because then you get into that double-mindedness. Really, where it's like we cannot live disconnected from ourselves. We cannot separate our minds from our hearts, right? Like we can't do it. We can't, that is not wholeness. That is not freedom. That is not unshakable. And so when we're double-minded in that because we're disconnected from ourselves because a part of us we find disgusting, right? And so I think that's like it's the thing we teach on emotions. They're there for a reason, right? It's that like they're not kids. You don't let them drive the car, but you also don't stuff them in the trunk. And so if disgust pops up even to yourself and you find like this part of me is disgusting, it's time to get curious about that. What part of me isn't bringing life? What part of me isn't fully alive, right? Like, what part of me am I trying to separate from and why? And when we get curious about that, then we can get to the root of it. And so disgust doesn't have to take over and drive the car, but we have to welcome it when it comes. And so there's some emotional mastery in this too, isn't there? Right? Like we talk about it with other people, but man, when we feel those emotions about ourselves, I think that is a perfect time to slow down, hit the brakes. Why are you here? And what do I need to change? What can I do differently that will be more life giving? Yeah.
So, what is the elixir? What is the
Hmm.
healing potion to this notion of self loathing and all of the different ways that it pours out?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because what we want to do, like, honestly, I'm like self love, self acceptance, but those are words. Those are words, really, that we throw around. But, like, how do we really put that into action? What does it look like to really live there? Another word we could throw out is confidence, right? Like, well, you just need more confidence. Anybody been told that before? That sucks to hear because you're like, well, I'm trying. I don't know how to do that. So let's talk about this for a minute because that's it. That's a powerful question.
Yeah, it is. So, what is the elixir? Because we have the easy one off things, and that's Amber, you and I, we just don't roll that way. Is just do this. Oh, yeah, because I equate us the way we work together. You know, you've got the medical profession, you've got the doctors that have a protocol, and so if you present with these symptoms, you get this treatment, right? So we're more like the functional health practitioners, where we're like, oh, you have these symptoms. Why do you have these symptoms? And what's going on behind the scenes, and how can we actually solve the actual real issue instead of just piling a cookie cutter treatment on. I think that's what really makes us unique, even in our coaching industry, is we don't have this super plan that's going to get you this exact thing. It's actually, who do you want to be and how do you want to show up in the world, and what is your voice in that world around you, and how do we get you operating in this place where self-doubt, self-loathing, all those things that we've talked about over the last several episodes, that they're no longer a thing. That's what unshakable looks like, is you're just so completely solid inside yourself that your circumstances aren't like tossing you and moving you. And so I wonder if there's a little bit of this that has to be individually tweaked in. Maybe there isn't a, well, just do this answer. And maybe it does take some self reflection, but to know, hey, there's a part of me that I'm rejecting because I don't like it. And what is that telling me? What is that calling me to do? Who is that calling me to be? Because sometimes I'm rejecting places of myself because I think others might not like that. And so I'm like, "Oh, I'm too much." It's something that I've battled, is I'm too much and not enough at the same time. Like, definitely been there, right?
Yes.
And so to be able to figure out what is that thing behind the thing. So I don't know if in this short episode that we're doing today that we can give you the cookie cutter answer, because really that's not what we're here for. We really are here to pull potential forward. And we really are here to equip you and guide you to coach yourself in the moment so that you don't have to live in a suffering state, in a place of misery, really. And this self-loathing thing is like this: I'm not good enough. Because I'm not good enough, I won't be loved. This disgust with a part of yourself that pushes yourself into two different directions. Those are the things that you're like, why isn't these outcomes happening in my life? And you can name them, right? Why aren't my relationships working? Why am I not getting the job I wanted? Why is my business not growing in the way it's supposed to grow? And I'll tell you, it's all an inner game. And we have to master that inner game so that the outer game will align with that whole inner game. And so I don't know if there's a clear cut answer here, which is okay. You get to sit in that tension, because, yeah, the half answers is you just need to love yourself more. Come on, buddy. It'll be okay.